Have you ever wondered what drives people to cruelty? Is it jealousy, insecurity, or just plain malice? If you were surrounded by people who hated you simply because you were better than them, and so pushed you too far to the edge, would you crumble under the weight of their cruelty and envy? Or would you stand tall and fight back or silently endure? Today, I want to tell you the story of a poor girl who experienced cruelty and envy from her classmates who were being driven by deep jealousy to do the unthinkable. They take matters so far that they cross a line they can never come back from. This story will take you to the corridors of Starlight International Academy, a school where wealth and privilege dictate the social ladder, until one poor girl steps in and shakes the entire system. But as you listen, I want your opinion. Did they deserve what happened to them in the end? Let me hear from you in the comments. The school bell rang sharply as the gates of Starlight International Academy swung open for the new term. Students in their designer uniforms and shiny leather shoes sauntered in, laughing, chatting, and occasionally snapping selfies by the sprawling fountain at the entrance. Among them, Amoka stepped in timidly, clutching her second-hand backpack. She had earned a scholarship to the most prestigious school in the city, a chance to rewrite her future. Her uniform was neat but clearly second-hand, and her shoes, though polished, bore the scuffs of many years. The whispers began almost immediately. "Who's that?" one girl in a glossy silk headband murmured. "I heard she's the scholarship student," replied another with a scoff. "Can you imagine? I didn't know they let people like her in here." Amoka tried to focus on finding her locker, but the eyes of the other students followed her every move. The loudest sneakers came from a corner where 3 girls stood, their matching manicures glinting under the fluorescent lights. They were led by Cynthia, the undisputed queen of the school, a girl whose father owned half the city. Beside her stood Vanessa and Teo, her loyal sidekicks. Cynthia smirked as Amoka walked past. "New girl," she called out, her voice dripping with mock sweetness. "Don't you know this school has a dress code? We don't do thrift store chic here." The hallway erupted into laughter. Amoka stopped, her cheeks burning. But instead of crying or running away, she looked Cynthia straight in the eyes. "I came here to learn, not to impress you," she said quietly before walking away. The laughter faded, and for a moment, Cynthia's smirk faltered. But then she flipped her hair and turned to her friends. "This is going to be fun," she said with a sly grin. Brilliance breeds jealousy. From the very first week, it became clear that Amoka was no ordinary student. She aced every test, often leaving even the best of the rich kids far behind. Teachers praised her constantly, using her work as an example during lessons. But the more Amoka shone, the more Cynthia's jealousy grew. For years, Cynthia had been the star of the class, not because of her intelligence but because no one dared to outshine her. And now, here was this girl, this nobody, stealing her spotlight. The tension boiled over one afternoon in the chemistry lab. Mr. Ade, the teacher, had just handed back the test results. "Once again, Amoka scored the highest," he announced, holding up her paper with a proud smile. The class groaned, but Cynthia's nails dug into her desk. When she saw her own score, barely a pass, her anger turned to rage. After class, Cynthia cornered Amoka by the lockers. "You think you're so smart, don't you?" she sneered. "Just because you can memorize a few textbooks doesn't mean you belong here." Amoka met her glare calmly. "If you spent as much time studying as you do bullying people, maybe you'd do better." The crowd of students gasped, and Cynthia's face turned red. She grabbed Amoka's books and threw them to the ground. "You regret this," she hissed before storming off. Cynthia's anger simmered for days, but she wasn't one to act impulsively. She needed a plan, a way to teach Amoka a lesson so harsh she'd never dare to cross her again. Sitting with Vanessa and Theo during lunch, she shared her idea. "This girl thinks she's untouchable," Cynthia said, her perfectly manicured fingers tapping the table. "She doesn't know who she's dealing with." Vanessa leaned in. "What are you thinking?" Cynthia smirked. "Something she won't forget. But we'll need help." Theo hesitated. "Don't you think you're taking this too far? She's just a girl." Cynthia shot her a glare. "If you're too scared, you can sit this one out." Theo looked away, but she didn't say another word. That afternoon, Cynthia called a group of local thugs her older brother knew, guys who would do anything for a quick payday. She met them behind the school and handed over a wad of cash. "There's a girl," she said, describing Amoka. "You'll find her after school tomorrow. Take her to the river behind the old mill. Make sure she doesn't come back." The men exchanged uneasy glances but nodded. "Consider it done," their leader said. The next day, Cynthia and her crew put their plan into motion. After the final bell, Amoka was walking home alone, as she always did. Her house was far from the luxurious estates her classmates lived in, but she didn't mind. It was quiet, and she enjoyed the solitude. As she crossed an empty street, a black van screeched to a halt in front of her. The doors flew open, and two men jumped out, grabbing her before she could scream. They blindfolded her, tied her hands, and shoved her into the van. Inside, Amoka's heart raced. She tried to stay calm, to think of a way out, but panic threatened to take over. The van stopped after what felt like an eternity. The men dragged her out and led her to the edge of the river. She could hear the water rushing, its roar growing louder with every step. "Cynthia sends her regards," one of the men said with a cruel laugh as they untied her hands. Amoka's mind raced. "Please," she said, her voice shaking. "You don't have to do this." But the men didn't listen. They shoved her into the water and watched as she sank beneath the surface. For a moment, everything was silent. The men stood by the riverbank, waiting to see if she would resurface. But then, the water began to churn violently. Waves crashed against the shore, and the men stumbled back in fear. From the depths of the river, a figure emerged. Amoka's human form was gone, replaced by a shimmering mermaid with scales that glowed in the moonlight. Her eyes burned with a fierce, otherworldly light, and her voice echoed like thunder. "You dared to harm me," she said, her voice cold and commanding. "Now, you will face the wrath of the river." The men screamed and tried to run, but the water rose up, forming giant waves that swallowed them whole. Their cries were drowned out as the river dragged them into its depths, never to be seen again. Cynthia, Vanessa, and Theo drove their SUV to the riverbank. They were surprised and shocked to see Amoka completely changed to a mermaid, now powerful, and commanding the waters and waves to destroy the men. As they tried to run, Amoka, who is now a mermaid, thrust the river current of waters at them, drowning them. The three of them disappeared beneath the river. The next morning, Starlight International Academy buzzed with whispers. Cynthia, Vanessa, and Theo hadn't shown up for school. Their parents had reported them missing, and police cars were parked outside the school gates. Amoka walked into class as if nothing had happened. Her calm demeanor unnerved the other students, but no one dared to ask her what she knew. As the days passed, the parents of the missing girls and the thugs searched desperately for their children, but there was no trace of them. The river remained silent, its waters calm and unyielding. Amoka, meanwhile, continued to excel in her studies. She never spoke of what happened that night, and no one ever connected her to the disappearances. But those who had mocked her now avoided her, their fear palpable. The story of the missing students became a cautionary tale at Starlight International Academy. Students whispered about the mysterious girl who had survived against all odds, and some swore they saw her scales glinting in the sunlight when she walked by the fountain. And as for Amoka, she carried on, her secret buried deep within her. The river had given her a second chance, and she was determined to make the most of it. But every so often, when she passed by the river, she would pause, her gaze lingering on the water. It was a reminder, a warning, that some lines should never be crossed.